Welcome once again, all you Warhammers and Warhammies. You have stumbled upon the best episode of Big M's Power Hour to date. I'm your host, Big M, along with my cohort, Cole of the Sea.
Hey, how we doing, everybody?
Good. How are you doing this month, huh?
I am doing all right. Actually had a month where I wasn't running around to an event for a change, so very odd for me as of late. Not that I'm complaining.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a very bizarre feeling.
It was.
So we're going to have a little bit of a special episode this month. I kind of want to leave this one a little bit closer to just the topic. If you so it can be used a little bit more of a guide, not more necessarily a guide, but like if you want to talk to your friends or just show them something, you don't have to worry about, oh, what happened in February of 2022, regardless of when you watch the video. Because we're going to talk about narrative today, and we're going to kind of pin it down a little bit to give a good starting point for other people. Now,
There you go.
Now, Cole, let me ask you. I know you are primarily a matched play player,
Yes, I am.
but you
I'll
also
admit
like
to
D
that.
and D. So clearly, you like role playing a little bit.
Right, right.
What experience do you have with
When
narrative?
narrative play, I have messed around with the Anvil of Apotheosis type stuff to make a little character. Outside of that, Ren 4's Battle Across the Realms is another event I've gone to in the past. Probably the biggest narrative style event I've ever done.
Yeah,
Uh, and, geez, I can't even remember what it is. The campaign play that is current for 3.0
yeah, Path of Glory.
Warhammer Age of Sigmar. Yeah, Path to Glory. That's the wording. Uh, got in a little bit on a tiny campaign with that, but really didn't go too far for me personally.
Yeah, it's. I really feel like you basically, in order for Path of Glory to really take off, which we'll get into more,
Hmm.
but just like on a one-off note here, I really think that in order for Path of Glory to really take off, you basically just need a group where you hang out. Like, hey, every Wednesday I get together with the guys and we play Path of Glory. You know?
Right. It's definitely like a store event type thing where, hey, at the store every Thursday or whatever, come down, we'll do Path to Glory night,
Yeah.
and everyone show up. Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's kind of where I would like to do more of that as well. We played a little bit.
Mhm.
I don't think you and I ever got to play in it, but
No, we haven't yet. No.
hopefully this month we're none of us are going to Adepticon. I forget. Are you going over to Neil and Dave's?
I'm hoping to be able to. We
Okay.
will see. Fingers crossed.
All right. So maybe we'll get a little bit of that
Yeah.
in there, or at least we'll make sure to get some in while you're not there. That's
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan. Yeah. Yeah. Let me show up with it and say, we don't need that.
well. So again, I have a little bit of a PowerPoint. So I think one of the biggest, or I have a PowerPoint. And one of the things I didn't really go over in there was kind of the difficulties of having a campaign. Um,
Yeah.
so I think we'll try and remind me to bring that in there, and we'll talk about
Yeah, I'll say something.
that. Yeah, as far as that goes, for me, what's really entertaining is my first real kind of step into the community was helping the Nova narrative back in 2018, where they were trying to kind of spruce things up, and so I. It was like after I volunteered, I realized that narrative really isn't for me. um,
Says the other D&D nerd in this
right.
whole chat
Well,
right
that's
now. Yeah.
and that's what's kind of weird is like even though like whenever I play D&D, I really like having a personality for my character.
Hmm.
Of course, I kind of let it drive my choices more so than like having conversation in character. And so
Okay.
like whenever you're on the table and other people are playing out their characters and stuff, like there's nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't work for me.
Fair enough.
And like I
Yeah.
said, I think that's if I had to guess, I would say that's the primary form of narrative. I think that's how most people narrative, where they have their characters and their characters will they'll kind of play out their character on the battlefield and even interact with one another. But that's not for me. So, but
Understood.
so I made a bunch of narrative hero war scrolls because I wanted to be a little different from the other options that are out there right now, and we'll go over that. So, anytime anyone that does know my name, they kind of associate me with the narrative side of things, even though I'm much more of a match player. Uh, but I
So strap in,
really,
everybody. Two match play players talking to you about narrative
oh
today.
yeah.
It's not.
Now I will say, like, so again, as someone that, and on top of that, I've also, I went to all those same things that you mentioned.
Right.
I don't remember if you were involved with Coalescence whenever that was going on, way back.
Yeah, I went way back whenever the Neos were setting up Coalescence and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely got to
Um,
do that a couple times.
I'll tell you that
Found out.
that really struck a chord with a lot of people. I really thought they had something. I was surprised when they didn't make more of it.
Yeah, I think my little local area there in Ligonier was very disappointed that each year or whatever they didn't continue because we definitely made a big thing of it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, put up a big sign and had everyone take a picture in front of it saying which faction had won at our store and
Yeah.
everything. It was great.
Yeah, I remember there because I was a little bit more on the inside with all that, so I remember how
Yeah,
many like responses we got, and it was very high, and it was
it
global.
was. Yeah.
Um, so that was a little disappointing, but again, there's nothing preventing you from doing it yourself or anything like that. And that's one of the things that um, I have done is Aaron, the same guy that got me involved with the Nova narrative, and the same one of the people behind the Coalescence, did a an event for his own little circle of friends every November 5th, where he did something with the wizard Guy Fawkes,
Okay.
and so he shared this pack with me, and I looked at it and I was like, it's interesting, but I kind of got a spark of inspiration, and so I kind of did my own thing with it.
Okay.
And so we ran 2 years, and then it just kind of fell off after that. Where every first weekend in November, I did a little narrative thing, where it was a 1 day event. 3 rounds is what we tried. We typically only got two.
Heck.
um,
No need
and
to put a time limit on it whenever it's narrative stuff.
Right, right. But a great time was to be had by all, and we'll
Mhm.
definitely go over all that later.
Good.
But yeah, I mean, playing both and being involved in both, uh, I'm gonna throw the gauntlet down now and say the spicy statement of narrative is hard mode, y'all.
Especially if you want to continue to do it over a long time.
Right. I mean, that's one of the things that a lot of people don't understand. You'll have a lot of the competitive players will say match play is the hard way. What are you talking about? Narrative's just goofing
Mhm.
around. And it's like, no, no, narrative, you're taking a set of rules that has been balanced and refined like a river rock,
Mhm.
and you want to add to it. You want to mess with the formula. And
Right.
so trying to get something that is, whether it's balanced or imbalanced, that has to be intentional.
Right. And at the end of the day, it has to be fun for everybody involved,
Right.
whether it's balanced or imbalanced.
Right.
If
And again, like, I mean, as far as imbalance goes, like a good example of what's imbalanced is I'm going to take 800 points of Space Marines, and I'm going to put them in a fort, and you get your Tyrannid collection, and you start with
right.
1,000 points, and you add a unit every round, and you see how long I can last.
Right. Yeah, something like that.
Right.
Yep.
Like, it's not competitive, that's not match play, and it might not be fully in the realm of narrative, but you are doing it for fun and you are telling a little story. So, in my mind, that's narrative.
Mhm. Yeah, it doesn't have to be these huge schemes to be a narrative fun game.
Right. Absolutely. So let me get my PowerPoint presentation ready.
Yeah.
So we'll get this set up here. Okay. So this first page here, we just kind of break down the anatomy of what is a narrative. And what's funny is whenever I first started doing this, I was I was actually looking at role playing versus mechanics, and then I was like, well, that's not fair. So then I was putting it together a graph of like the y-axis was how much role playing and the x-axis was how much mechanics, and then I was looking at
Very
different
nice.
events and seeing where that landed, and I was like, well, it really doesn't matter at the end of the day because it is a sliding scale, and you can include ever how much role playing and how many mechanics you are putting in there. Um, and so whenever you talk about narrative, this is kind of what most people are thinking. So
Okay.
role playing, are you actually playing a character? Are you playing an army? Does your army have an identity? Do you, or are you just there for the good times? Mechanics. This is where typically you'll see weird stuff like um, a table with the portals in every corner, and you roll a die to see which one you come out of, or anything like that. This is where you can picking up objectives as a normal occurrence.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and then of course the other one, the staple for basically every narrative event I've gone to, they all have narrative heroes. And now what that means is essentially the pack will say, bring an army of this many points, and you also get a narrative hero. And then the pack will tell you how to make your hero or how your hero will be made. And then lastly, we'll kind of go over, if you're interested in narrative, where to get started. So moving along here, under role playing. So for named characters, this is how many named characters do you want? Sometimes it could just be your narrative hero, and everyone else is just kind of fodder that you're working with. Every hero could have a name. Your main general and maybe a sergeant for a unit might have a name. What are they like on and off the battlefield? Do you have someone who is blood fury on the battlefield and then quiet, reserved, and shy off the battlefield? And you kind of want to role play that between rounds, or you gotta it's something to consider. Additionally, like how did they get there? It's something you can definitely add to the background. And then if you are going to go this route, I highly recommend figuring out what their goal is. If you figure out what their goal is, it kind of makes everything else come together. Um, so let me ask this, Cole. For bars,
Mm.
we had to have a named character with a background.
Yeah.
Who is your character?
Mine was King Lotau. Actually, have the card here in my background. Now that you're asking, so we had good old King Lotau, which is going to be blurry as all get out, but that's okay. He kind of ascended through the ranks of the Namarti as politically and normally as you possibly could. Got lucky enough to be born with a soul for Namarti, which, always starts you off on the right path. Worked his way through and finally had made himself up to king. Of course, he needed something bad to happen to him. Can't just be a normal guy.
Yeah.
So he and his wife go, have a child. And of course, it's one of the soulless, made into earlier Namarti. So one of those things, he now has something that he considers to be a bad thing. And it went from just being, oh yeah, we have to go collect these souls so we keep some folks alive, to, all right, there has to be a cure out there. There's got to be something.
Yeah.
And that's what he wants, is to find whatever that cure is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's, and so there you go. I mean, that gives you, honestly, that checked everything off of my list. And I
Yep.
know we've talked about this before. That's basically how you tell the story every time. So,
Yeah.
um, so like for me, um, I was doing Lumineth at the time, and it didn't really work out too well. I kind of had a character that I made up, and everything was kind of going well. But the problem was, is I went with a lore master, and then Neil said no unique characters, and I was like, of crap. And so then I was like, all right, well then what I'll do is I'll give him the Spirit of the Wind companion.
Right.
And I was like, okay, well, no named, so I'll go with the generic. Oh, the generic's not a hero. I can't use
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
so
that just fought you the whole way.
so I put a lore seeker and a Spirit of the Wind on the same base and played it as a Lord Regent.
There
And
we
so
go.
so for my character, um, I kind of failed to come up with a goal here, which is kind of one of the reasons why
Mhm.
I kind of learned my lessons as I go along. He was essentially he was kind of like a little Jedi-ish of the Lumineth. Because all the book, like if you read through the battle tome, it just talks basically about how like arrogant they are.
Right.
Like it's just arrogance, arrogance, arrogance. And so like this was like one character who stopped and was like, well, just because we are this good and we're good at what we do, why does that make us better than other people? And so what was very interesting is I came out with him during the first book, when the first book came out, and he was essentially a lore master or lore keeper. What's the
Oh, geez, you're
now
gonna
I
make
said it.
me.
So the standalone guides you put on anywhere
I
in the
can
book.
guess now. I don't remember.
I'm
Yes,
pretty sure it's lore keeper.
sounds right.
So I basically made him a lore keeper before lore keeper came out, and essentially he was going around to the different settlements and like trying to like gather information and trying to like help. Like I actually went to say he was going to help enlighten people, and then the new book came out, and then you had the lore keepers and you had alumnia or not alumnia. What was the settlers reach?
Oh, geez, I
Settlers
can't
gain.
remember.
Settlers gain.
Yes, that was it.
Where there's literally Lumineth there. I'm like, you quit reading my
Hmm.
narrative.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, what a little bit of a counterexample is the last time Ren 4 had a competitive tournament.
Hmm.
I brought my Fire Slayers. And so I had my hero. Um, what was his name? I can't remember it now. But it was a Rune Father who was. I had a giant narrative going for all of my Duarden armies.
Okay.
So I had a cities Duarden army, I had a KO army, and I had a Fire
Fire
Slayers army.
Slayers.
And
Okay.
so the Warden King of my Duarden army was refounding the Duarden Kingdom.
Okay.
And so the Rune Father took it upon himself to, in the same act of Grungni, wanted to prove himself before he swore fealty to the rebuild of the nation. So I took him to Ren 4 and got my teeth kicked in. So he never returned. So he kept going. And so that army still has yet to win. So they're still trying to get themselves proved.
Oh boy, they still are not worthy of this kingdom. Oh,
Which has actually turned into a more interesting narrative.
I agree. I think that ends up being a lot more fun.
And then what's also entertaining is so the KO side was kind of the go between trying to like because again in a fantasy setting travel is very difficult. So
Right.
this is essentially their scouts, they are emissaries, they are continuing to barter with the different cities of Sigmar so they can try and get goods. They can also get the word out to the Duarden, hey, you have a home, come back.
Right.
And on one of the missions, they went and then they came back to the mountain where the kingdom was starting, and the Warden King was gone.
Right.
And the reason for that is because one day, whenever I was on Facebook, someone posted about how they were trying to get their friend into Warhammer Fantasy, and all he wanted to do was play dwarves.
Oh, that's right. Now I
So I
remember this story.
sold my dispossessed because they're
Yeah.
as a standalone force, they're not very good. And so I'm
No.
not just going to
No.
sit on models for no reason.
Understandable.
So I included that in my narrative as well.
There you go.
But yeah, so let's go. So back to the story here. So then, for army details, like you just saw there, um, how long has the army been together? Is it a specific army, or is it just a mishmash of troops? That this is just who you happen to be with? Do you have any special units? Originally, before there was a lore keeper, was it lore keeper? Hold on, guys. I'm sorry. We're gonna settle this right now. Hold on.
Uh-oh.
Because I'm going to keep bringing him up. So, anyways, before he came, before there was a model for him, I really didn't know what I wanted to make him because the Lumineth heroes leave a little bit to be desired.
Okay.
Let's see, where are you? Lore Seeker. Lore Seeker. That's the one. And so I actually had him starting as the champion to a warden's unit.
Okay.
So that was where my narrative hero was, my narrative character was. And then for the last one, what I put on there is, what would your general do? This is really like whenever you're sitting down to actually play your narrative game, this is what you want to consider. Like, how much do you want to go Chuck level where where you've decided that your character hates, I don't know, Bellacore.
Right. Yeah.
And so you're going to throw your Warden King into Bellacore, or you're going to remain tactically sound, and then how much do you want your characters to influence between game negotiating? And so there's a topic on this. There's a slide on this later that we'll get a little more into at that point. But it's kind of like you have to think: Am I here just to roll dice and have fun? Am I here to actually play a role? You kind of, that's something you want to think of, and you also want to kind of feel what the event is, because if everyone is staying in character and doing these decisions, you don't want to be the douchebag power gaming.
He's going out of character, and power gaming and trying
power
to win
gaming
that way.
And being like, I'll just make decisions for whatever's most tactical as opposed to what my character would do.
Right.
And finally, we have whenever it comes to role playing, is the setting. Is this a persistent world? Is it brand new? Does it even matter? So I put in here Dawnlands, which is what the setting is in the Nova Open Grand Narrative. Every year, they came up with Dawnlands, and every year the Grand Narrative changes the setting. So like the first year they started really getting big, that someone brought Nefertata, and she just wrecked face.
Okay.
And so she ended up taking the throne, and so next year Nefertata was actually the leader of Dawnland.
Oh, okay.
Right. So again, it is a very interesting thing, and there's a lot of facets to it, because, and this goes true with narrative as a whole, like, not everything has to be grandiose and gigantic, but at the same time, feel free to let yourself just play and see how it goes out. Like, they weren't vying for who was going to be in charge of Dawnland. That's just how the games turned out. And so they let it just happen naturally, which is one of the reasons why it's as cool as it is. So again, if you want to come up with a world, do it. If you think that's too much work, don't worry about it. Just put yourself in accuracy and move on. So mechanics. This is arguably what makes narrative so hard. You have to kind of look over the standard mechanics and go, what works for my game and what doesn't. I know recently we had Holy Havoc, which is a narrative event that is teams, and it's amazing. Chuck and I went there a couple years ago. We'd love to go back. We're just kind of waiting for the world to settle down a little bit. For that, this year, they did away with battle tactics.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense for a narrative game. I can see that. I can see making up your own
Right.
battle tactics
Yeah, absolutely.
as well.
I
For
could see
that.
coming up
Yeah.
with unique ones. Exactly. Your own grand strategies. You can come up with additional grand strategies, additional battle tactics. You can come up with something brand new. It doesn't matter, which is the next point, new mechanics. You know, you're not required to add new mechanics, but if you play the game long enough, you're going to go, I wonder what happened if we did this. I mean, there's the battle plan I always talk about, the Unchained Colossus, where what happens if you put a purple sun on the table and you get to
Right.
control it,
Yeah.
So some of the things I kind of came up with here was currency collection. In my game, I put coins on the table and players pick up the coins. And then they can either hold on to them to get certain placings at the end of the game, or they can spend them and screw over everyone else at the table. If you want to make up new terrain rules, or if you want to come up with a weird way to deploy, like these are all things that are on the table. Don't let yourself be limited. And then the other difficult part is the integrating standard and new mechanics. Like if you're going to, again, if you're going to put in the enhanced terrain rules, maybe you should add a couple battle tactics, if you're going to keep battle tactics, that deal with that to help encourage your players to actually do engage in the rules that you put them in. So if there is one of be in, have your players get in your a piece of terrain and fly it more than 12 inches in one round. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
And then, like I said, on there it says consider effects of balance. It doesn't say keep the game balanced, because that's not the point of narrative. The point is to do weird stuff.
Right.
So as long
To
as
tell a story at the end of the day. Yeah.
So if you come up with something that's unbalanced, make sure that it makes sense why it's unbalanced, and try and have everyone have equal access to it, sort of, or figure out a way that, like I said, there's a million ways to do it. It's hard to even pin one down. And then also, if it's just you and a couple buddies just doing a day thing, just kind of all be in the mindset of hey, if something's a little strong,
We'll fix it right here and now. Yeah.
just fix it.
Yeah.
Now, like I was talking about, in between rounds. Between rounds is often a time where players try to wheel and deal each other for alliances and favors. Don't miss the opportunity to get some secret advantages. So, if you're ever playing a game and you see Chuck Moore, he's going to try and get under your skin.
Yeah, he is.
So just tell him no, and don't let him just get on it. Don't let him get away with his little plans.
It's going to be bad for everybody.
But again,
So
this
no.
is where I was talking about with, also considering your character. Like, are you taking on the mantle of your character whenever you're not on the tabletop? So, if you were playing as your king, you might talk to the Zinj character or the Zinj player to see, try and
If I could get something magical off of them and some sort of belief that maybe that would help my cause. Yeah.
Right. Whereas, if I'm playing my Stormcast and you were playing Khorne, if I was playing as my character, I would never.
Neither would the corn player, probably.
Right.
Yeah.
But if I know you and I are going to be on the one side of the table, I might reach out to you to be like, hey, let's go after this guy.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll see this happen. Just know that it is happening and don't miss out. You will be
Yeah.
at a stark disadvantage. All right, so over to the narrative heroes. Um,
Sure.
this is probably my favorite part of narrative.
Yeah, getting to create your hero. I am kind of sad that this system here on this page was not in the next General's
Oh, I
Handbook,
mean,
but that's a good thing I still have that book,
yeah. I mean, if there's one thing GW is spot on about, it's letting things slip through their fingers and waiting for the iron to cool before striking. That's
Hmm.
not thinking of Kurnoth in any way, though. That's not.
No, 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 never.
So,
Nobody is waiting on those.
so the first one that I picked up or that I put down here was point buy, and as we were talking about before, that's the there was a section in the General's Handbook 2020 called the Anvil of Apotheosis, and it kind of broke down a point buy system. Wasn't the greatest, and it wasn't super balanced, but with GW giving us something to sink our teeth into, it got a lot more people into narrative overnight.
At the very least, they wanted to make a hero of some sort. Yeah,
Right. And
agreed.
like I said, I mean, why they didn't put something up on the website where you could build your character. Like I said, in my mind, this was the start of narrative. Like, this was where you were going to see a mass level of it. And all they needed to do is come out with something like the Crusade book that they came out with for 40K
Oh, agreed.
with this sort of
Agreed.
thing, and it would have taken off. But so how does it work? So you start off with an agreed amount of point totals. So if you look here, so Dwarden are 4 points. So that's clear what I'm going to go with, and elves are somehow 3 points because of course they are. So
Right.
that's what Cole's going to go with.
Yeah.
God damn elves.
Your favorite, I know.
So from there, there's going to be lists of abilities, there's going to be lists of stats, there's going to be lists of weapons, etc. There's going to be a whole bunch of stuff. Like, I think on top of that here, you had like a base. You could choose to be a priest, a wizard, or a commander. And so each one of those had point values as well. So if you wanted to be on a horse, like you could have a grot on a griffhound with a lance and a shield, but he was also a priest, you could do that.
Yep.
Probably wouldn't be very good, but you could do it.
Yeah, why not?
And then basically you just keep picking out different things, either what's listed as their limitations or until you run out of points. Now for the pros on this, it's I should have put balanced in quotes
Right.
because again, like I said, it's balanced ish. You can't just take whatever you want, but at the same time, everyone has access to the same things. It's predictable, so again, you know kind of what the level is. If someone has a dwarf army, they're probably going to make a dwarf hero. They're not required to, but using this is you're going to be able to figure out kind of who's going to bring what. And oh, you can say something, Cole?
No, go ahead. Go ahead. No problem.
And then, like I said, as far as controllable goes, it's easy to go, hey, I kind of want like really powerful heroes. You can just crank those points up. Now, from the cons, it's going to be real limited. And by limited, I kind of mean variety a little bit, but you're going to have kind of limited on what you're going to be able to do overall. So, like, if you're going to make a melee hero, there's only so many melee heroes you can do in this sort of situation. Kind of everything has to kind of stay in a box. And that's kind of like that's the only thing I really don't like about it. Like that to me is the biggest con. But at the same time, you're doing narrative, so if you're doing a campaign or something, you can always go like, oh, you bought a hammer, but on your last match you beat up my guy, so you have a special hammer now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
Very
fine.
easily can start adding more to it. Yeah.
Right. So this typically generates very similar characters that are best, like best builds will start coming up. Like you'll see, basically, it's essentially the net list sort of thing. And then trying to balance points can be tricky because, like, I know in the Anvil of Apotheosis, there was mounts were considered basically worthless.
Yeah, I remember them being very high points for just the additional movement they gave you.
Yeah, if they would have done something like added, I don't know. Like, I mean, yeah, I don't.
Just make the points lower. Make
Right.
it more valuable to just go, hey, be on a horse if you want. Who
I also
cares?
think it should have been a little bit more. They should have added a little bit more. Like you could have gotten a. I don't remember. You might have. If you had like a Dracoth or something, you got lightning breath.
Yeah, something like that would have been fun.
So overall, what do you think of the point buy system?
I think I personally like it. It's really approachable for anybody new to the idea of narrative,
Yes.
anything like that.
Yeah.
Especially coming from match play, you see points, you're like, I understand points. There's nothing wrong with that.
And that's actually that's such a good point. I definitely should have had that under the pros. That it is very approachable and very understandable.
Yeah,
And again, like I said, I really like it as well. Just because I like fidgeting with numbers and fidgeting with
yeah,
combos and stuff like that. So it could very easily be a thing where I would literally just spend an afternoon just going, oh, what if I made a death mage priest, and I don't know.
yeah. Messed around with it in that way.
So and again, I know I brought up three specific types here. By no means are this is this the this is by no means a set list, because again, talking about bars with Neil's event, what he had you do is he had you choose a hero of a pre-existing war scroll. It could not be unique, it could not be named, and it could not have more than 8 wounds.
Yeah,
Other than that, it was good.
yeah. That's the whole reason I was a king. I was able to fit that in there, and it was just fun time.
Yeah, again, not super awesome for Lumina.
No, no.
I personally fought against it for months.
I know you did.
But I mean, again, at the end of the day, outside of the little issues that I had with it, it worked out really well for
Yeah, no, I really did enjoy bars for the
yeah.
way Neil had that set up. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I would say mainly for like just the narrative hero. Well, I guess for as
Oh.
simple as the system was, I think it did work out pretty well.
Hmm.
I still wish he would let me make him champions, but hey, that's neither here
You
nor
know.
there. Well, it will be here in 2 scrolls or in 2 slides, but the next slide
There we go.
is ability gain. So this is I've really only seen this at the holy events.
Okay.
Essentially, what it is, he gives you one of, I believe he gives you like one of a couple war scrolls to choose from. So it's like you have mage, priest, ranger, and fighter.
Okay.
And then every time you finish a fight, you he has like a list of like 6 abilities, and or it might be more at this. It might be 8 abilities, and like 4 of them you have to complete something in game to access them.
Okay.
So like there's a special objective. Did you hold the objective? Okay, you can now get objective holder, and now you count as double whenever you hold an objective. I don't know, man. Just
Okay.
make it up. Have
Right.
fun.
Just spitballing on something right now. Yeah.
So, and then again, typically what they do is they focus on different aspects of play. So, like for me, I was whenever we went, I was going as KO, and so my narrative hero was super dumb. I loved him, but I felt bad for everyone that took their narrative hero very seriously to have to be next to mine. I took a gun hauler, and then I took the old named Warden King model, and
Okay.
I just wedged him in front of the driver.
Nice.
So I focused heavily on the movement abilities and the shooting abilities,
Right.
and it turned out fine. I mean,
Yeah.
he was probably the best unit in my army because I had KO, and they're They were KO.
Right. Yeah. They like boats and shooting things. So I mean, he had those.
Yeah. So as far as this goes for pros, the one thing that's really easy about this is it's simple. It's super simple. You go, what ability do I want? There's an ability I want. Okay, do my stats change? No, they're the same as they were. Go. It's just super
Right.
quick, and again, it's balanced because you're not adding anything too extreme. Now, again, with that balance comes the issue of the limited growth. So you can only get so many abilities, and so once you get those four abilities, your characters kind of
Yeah.
reach the peak. And then again, on top of that, it's kind of the same issue with point buy. You don't have a lot of variety in the heroes that you're going to see, and you're not going to really feel unique outside of your own story. That is. Personally, I actually really liked this. I was surprised at how much I liked it. Um, if you saw this at an event, would this make you more or less likely to try it out?
At a narrative event, I
Yeah,
think I would be more inclined to have my character gain abilities as time goes on. I enjoyed doing that at bars as well.
yeah,
Yeah. So,
yeah. I mean, and honestly, this is a little like bars.
yeah.
It's bars is a little bit more in depth because from there,
Yeah. Neil went much more in depth there,
yeah.
but
But at the same time, you can also level up a lot more.
right, right.
How much that can carry over to the next event, we'll see. But
Yeah.
um, I think it's still kind of you can only gain so many abilities.
Hmm.
um, and then I was having a really hard time kind of coming up with this last method
Okay.
because I kind of wanted to touch on how I did things,
Hmm.
but at the same time, it was so I don't know how to like the problem is every
It's
time I
very unique.
yes
And it's you're essentially going to sit down and be a rules writer
right
with you and a group of people, and you're going to start from scratch, basically, from what
right
I understand.
yeah yeah you're absolutely
Yeah.
right. And so like for me, um, or for what I did here, I wrote there's no set methods, and it really is just you just spitball and come up with ideas until you come up with something. It's going to take um, a very long time. Like for me, I came up with 12 heroes, and that took me. I was expecting so we had a deadline of July. And so I just kind of wanted to be done. So I
Mhm.
started in January and I was working up until like the week before the deadline.
So much for just getting done.
Right. I mean, well, so first up, I was also only going to do like six.
6, 12. That's similar, you know.
Well, so essentially what it was is like, so I came up with six and I based them off
Mhm.
of I did um, three standard heroes, like three standard D&D types where I did like the mage, the rogue, and the priest. Or
Okay. Yeah.
fighter, mage, rogue is what I based off of. And then I
Okay.
did three weird ones where I
Mhm.
just kind of came up with unique stuff. Then um, I was like, I need to kind of integrate their stuff into it a little bit more. And so they came up with this system, which is actually this is a great thing to incorporate here whenever you do your story to figure out a way to overcome the grand alliances because chances are you're going to have 75% order, 10% destruction,
Chaos.
and the
Yeah.
rest chaos. You know, like
Yeah.
and maybe a death player. And you're going to have to work with people that you normally wouldn't in a big event.
Hmm.
And on top of that, even still, you don't want to tell your buddy like, "Hey, do you have any orcs?" Well, no, I don't have orcs. Okay, well, we're only doing orcs, so sorry. You know,
Right.
they came up with this guild system where there were four guilds, and you forgot about you basically shed your Grand Alliance and went with your guild instead.
Okay.
So I came up
Very
with
cool.
one war scroll to suit the feeling of each guild.
Okay.
So then I was up to 10. And then I came up with two
Right.
more ideas, so I came up with two more.
So you might as well.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But yeah, so I said, so that's going to be the biggest con is trying to balance these. We actually did a play test where I put it out on Facebook, I put it out on Twitter, I put it out everywhere I could, and I put out like a survey and everything to try and get everything to get as much feedback as I could, and I almost got 200 responses.
Wow, that's awesome.
And there was very little that people found that was a little unbalanced. And I kind of lucked out with that, really. So let me show you what I came up with here. So this is
Sure.
one of them. This is the secret 12th one that never was released. This is the Thunderous Equestrian. So essentially what I did was I kind of thought back to old school second edition Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay. So this is more of our Lancer here, I'm seeing. Okay.
Well, so not even so much that. So I went with the concept of balance,
Okay.
where. So did you ever play second edition?
I can't say I ever have. No.
So whenever you started as a fighter, you got a decent amount of hit points, you got a decent amount of armor, you got a decent amount of damage per turn. If you went as a magic user, you got a D4 for your hit die. You needed an incredible amount of Constitution to get +1 health.
Okay.
You couldn't use any weapons other than like a dagger and I think maybe a crossbow.
Okay.
And you got 2 spells a day.
So what you're saying is you sat at the back until it was time to cast Fireball. You
No,
did
no.
that,
Oh,
and
no.
then
You didn't get Fireball for a good long while.
Magic Missile?
Yes, you would get Magic Missile,
Okay.
and that would do like 1d4 without having to roll it to hit.
Okay.
You could do that twice a day. So,
Mm.
but at the end of the game, so you had like the fighter who just had a steady progression. So at the beginning
Okay.
he was strong, at the end he was strong. And for magic users, they were god awful terrible. And if you could make it to the end with them, they were unstoppable behemoths.
Okay.
And so if you let them get to that point, then you deserved it.
Congrats.
You earned it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of what I did with these. So I tried to put a lot of wounds in there, and at that time, a 4-up save people would go nuts about because this was early second edition.
Okay.
And then I gave them a profile, an attack profile. So under requirements, this was basically what kind of model you would have to bring. So if there was any sort of limitations, this is where it was. This was one of the few that had the limitations where it basically had to be something on a mount, or it had to be something like a Minotaur.
Okay.
Then, in order to balance it out as well, there was a thing we called a claim, which is essentially experience points. Every single war scroll gained a claim differently.
Okay.
So for the Thunderous Equestrian, he gained 1 acclaim every time it successfully completed a charge.
All right. Seems pretty doable, especially with the movement he has. He should be able to set
Right.
himself up to get a charge off. Yeah.
And as he goes up higher in level, the better he becomes at it. So like he gets the ability to like charge through a unit and
Okay.
just keep going, and so he does mortal wounds based on how many models he trampled over.
Yeah.
But then there's others, like I had one called the Meek Escorted, which was based off of like somewhere between Rasslin and Bilbo, where he literally he started off with an attack called Frightened Swipes that had a rend of +1.
That's not good.
No,
That's the opposite of what I want, Matt.
but at the end he had an attack that was doing 5 attacks at 3s, 2s, rend 3, 4 damage.
So you could get him through being a frightened soul.
Right. And so there was additional balance there because his acclaim was at the end of the round, if he didn't take damage, he gets 1 acclaim. Or at the end of the turn, he gets 1 acclaim.
Okay.
And so you basically have to hide him and keep him safe while your opponents go, shit, that's a Meek Escorted. We got to get him.
Nice.
And so then you also have the issue of mid game where he's kind of getting good. Oh, I could really use him here. Oh, do I want to risk it?
Right.
And so as the game goes on, you would just tick up your acclaim, and then whenever you hit the points, so like Lightning Gallop gained 10 acclaim, and the Thunderous Equestrian rolls 3 dice and discards the lowest when it attempts to charge. Additionally, you can re-roll failed charge attempts.
Jeez.
So as soon as you got 10 acclaim, you had access to that ability.
Okay.
So, like I said, this is something that I'm still super proud of. I really like these guys. I kind of look for reasons to use them again. Um, so I apologize, everybody. I know I brag about them a little bit, but
It's okay. That is perfectly fine.
in all honesty, if anyone wants to see them, if anyone wants to comment, what I'll do is I'll put together a zip a zip file, and I'll put it on my Google Drive, and I'll share out a link to it if anyone has an interest to the group of War Scrolls. I have no problem doing that. So moving along to how to get started. So probably the easiest first step is, I'm pretty sure I put almost all because I'm sure either there has been or there will be one that doesn't, but almost all battle tomes have one or two battle plans in there where it's based around your army. So like for Fire Slayers, I know Fire Slayers have one where you take your terrain feature and put it in the middle of the board, and your goal is to light the fire before your opponent kills you.
Sounds like a very narrative mission to me.
Right. Like I said, I've looked through a couple of them, and there is not a non-narrative one to be seen.
Good.
And then, like I said, for the General's Handbook, I think this was the first one that didn't have narrative battle plans in it.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think we're normally used to seeing these. Maybe we will get something like the 40K version where we do get nothing but narrative in it
I mean, I
at
would.
some point. But
This is one of the things that drives me up the walls. Like, they feel like to me, it seems like they put in there that like, hey, narrative, you just do whatever you want, and then they just kind of like said, we told you to do whatever you want. I don't.
right, yeah,
But in 3.0, they came out with the next one I have listed here is Path to Glory. Essentially, it's a little bit of it's a kind of a map campaign, sort of. Well, there's no real
kinda.
map. You could easily
Yeah.
incorporate a map, and it is a good way to do a campaign. It's a good way to build a force. You start off very small, or can start off very small, and it's pretty good at actually growing your army. This is
Very choose your own adventure in the way that you can pick your mission and everything.
yeah. You pick your mission, you pick your quests, you pick your everything, and this I think is a good time to talk about campaigns a little bit here.
Mm-hmm.
One of the biggest issues with campaigns is growth, because you don't want to just, I don't know, like kind of take your army and smash it against your buddy's army over and over again while trying to tell this evolving story when your army itself isn't evolving.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is if you get awarded for winning, then all of a sudden, oh, crap, Cole won, so now Cole has an advantage over my army that he already beat.
Right. It's only going to get worse from here. Yeah.
Right. And so that is very typical. Like, I know that the Battle Company's plan for Middle Earth is very notorious for that. As much as I love it, you basically, at some point, you have to just give your opponent a bone and be like, hey, reinforcements showed up.
Right.
And Path to Glory kind of limits. You can recruit more units, but that doesn't mean you can use them, and so that kind of helps a little bit.
Right. It just increases the pool that you have, which can be a bad thing because now you might have a tool that deals with whoever it is you're playing against.
Right. And like I said, I mean, you're always going to have some sort of imbalance at that point. I don't know. I don't know what to do with that sort of thing. I don't know if, like, if every time you lose, you should get a triumph.
It wouldn't hurt. I feel like if you're going to set it up, Winner should get something, but the person who lost, you almost want to give them as much or more on their loss. Maybe just going through a different chart in
Yeah.
order to help them be the victor next time go
Yeah.
around.
Which is why I think we need a Path to Glory book.
Yeah, I
Or
don't argue.
we need our neon buddies to come up with that
Yeah.
supplement. And we'll get into who neon is at the end of the video here. So
Mhm.
the next one thing I put in here was Triumphant Treachery. That's going to be something that you're going to hear occasionally. It is a little bit of an older rule set. It did start in Warhammer Fantasy, and it did have rules updated for last edition. But I'm pretty sure we kind of are going to put it in the closet at this point with Path to Glory and how successful it is.
Yeah, I think you're right. Sadly, I do enjoy the idea of Triumphant Treachery, where it's a four-person brawl, but I think it is going to be something that Games Workshop themselves aren't going to put any more effort into it right now.
Right. And in all honesty, like, I know Bars started as a Triumphant Treachery
Hmm.
event, and the more and more we looked at Triumphant Treachery, the more and more we realized it's not suited for AOS. For the events that I was running, I did the exact same thing. I started Triumphant Treachery, read the Triumphant Treachery rules, and went, "Bleh,"
Yeah,
and kind of shied away from them.
right.
The biggest thing I had was you picked who your opponent was that turn,
Okay.
and
So
so
you can
like
only affect one person, essentially.
right, and so like to me, I felt like that was very short-sighted. So like, say if you, me, Chuck, and Alex are playing a game of Triumphant Treachery, I charge in. Alex charges me, so then my turn I charge Chuck, and then my turn comes around again, and I'm losing both those combats, and I just pick you as my
Right.
foe, and
Yeah.
you're on the opposite side of the table. Like, what?
Yeah. No, I understand.
Whenever I do it, all I ever do multiplayer games is whoever is whoever you are in combat with during the active player's turn are the only combats that happen.
No, I like that.
So
If player
again,
A and player B are in a fight and it's player C's turn, player A and player B don't have to find out who won their fight.
right. Nothing your turn, but everyone who's engaged with player C, all those fights happen. So, like I said, if you hear Triumphant Treachery, that's what they're talking about. It is newly archaic.
Yeah.
Now, as far as events go, events are always great, whether it's competitive, narrative, whatever. If you want to start local, I guarantee you, if you ask around your local friendly game store, they will have something. They'll have at least a nugget or someone else said something. If not, go on the Facebook. There's like, I know for us, we're I don't know if you consider yourself Pittsburgh or not, Cole.
Yeah. Yeah. Close enough.
If you just go into Facebook and do Warhammer Pittsburgh, you get about 20 results.
Yeah. You get quite a few different pages. You will find someone in your local area.
And then of course, if you know how to use Discord, go for it. I know Fabricator Forge has a Discord, and they use that to organize things all the time. And from those, from the local, you'll typically find the regional stuff. So that's what Battle Across the Realms is. I'm sure Neil would say it's more of a local event, but when you have people drive from 4 to 5, 6, 7 hours away, it's now regional.
Yep.
I think the cutoff point for local is right between like 16 and 20 people.
I agree. Once you're over a 16-person event, yeah, people are making a move to come to see you.
It's now regional.
Yeah.
So if you hear, like, again, if you hear them talk about anything, just ask about it. Find out what it is. And for people that don't know, if this is your first episode,
Right.
Battle Across the Realms is an event that Neil puts on once a year. in middle of nowhere, Ohio, under the Ren
Yeah.
4 club. And it is a narrative event where he has all these tables spread out across Battlegrounds, the name of the game store that he runs out of. And each table is its own realm, and so each realm has their own artifacts, and then of course there's new types of objectives. So I expect that we're not going to worry about grand narrative or grand strategies and battle tactics there.
No, I can't imagine that we will. Either that or your army will have to make up its own
Right.
grand strategy or something like that.
Right. And so essentially every round you have to go to a new table and you have to figure out what you're there for.
Right.
I I think he's steering away from that. Last year that was literally the goal, is you had to come up with your own goal.
Right.
And I think a lot of people liked it more than I thought they were going to, but I don't think Neil was a huge fan of how it played out, so I think that is changing. I don't think I'm under NDA, so I don't think I said anything I shouldn't have said. But like for me,
He'll come for you. Don't worry.
I was playing as Lumineth, and my goal was to stay in Hish and protect Hish.
Right.
Well, I don't know why, but round one, we finished first. And so he was doing it on whoever finished first got their preference first. And so I wanted to get done as quickly as possible so I could stay on Hish. So like, Hish, boom, bam. And he sends me to Shaish. I'm like, what? What? Like, okay, well, there goes my goal.
Yeah.
And then for national events, you're going to have, these are the big ones. So this is where Nova, Adepticon, NashCon, LVO. I don't know if NashCon and LVO have narrative events. I know for a fact.
Go ahead.
I know for a fact Nova and Adepticon do.
Yes. I don't know if NashCon does. I feel like I don't remember seeing it, at least this past year. Who knows, once things open up more and they can get more people in there, might change.
Right. And if it is at LVO, you have all of the frontline gaming events that they would be present at. So,
Right.
Oh boy, you'd have a whole can of worms open for you there. And
Yeah,
then the other real big one is Holy Wars and Holy Havoc. That takes place in Midwest, up near Chicago, just on the rural areas of Chicago. And Steve Herner has put together, I don't remember how many tables he's up to, but he put together these near professional level, just amazing terrain tables where essentially it's you and your partner versus your opponents, and all four of you are also fighting against the table.
Yeah, I just saw photos of the table not too long ago. The event wasn't too terribly long ago. And
No,
it is beautiful. And just hearing the stories of how, yeah, the army across the table is actually kind of an inconvenience for what you are attempting to do in comparison to what that table might do to you.
you'll see there's one that it doesn't look that bad. I think it's Gairan, and there's a giant tree blocking the middle of the table. And that tree killed more Endrin riggers than my opponent did.
Oh, lovely. Quite the Whomping Willow, or whatever you want to call it, that, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, and then the last thing I put on here is don't worry about being too new. All skill levels are welcome. And I tell this every time we talk about any event, whether it's competitive, narrative, or whatever. People just want you involved.
Yes. The more people, the better. Always.
Honestly, the only ask is be comfortable with the base rules. Even if you have to have your war scrolls out there, just try and know the base rules and try and know your
own army a little bit. Yeah.
Right. I would just say even if you can just get down your allegiance abilities and be somewhat familiar. Like, as long as you don't have to open the book every turn for every movement of everything, it's fine. Just play. Have a good time. And then the last part of how to get started, making your own. This is a hobby about doing everything yourself. So making your own is only a natural evolution. So there's a lot of things you got to consider. So first off, you have your scale. Are you just playing with a buddy? Are you playing with a bunch of buddies? Are you doing a campaign? You know, because all of those things are going to impact how you do things. If you're only doing a one-off game and you want to do narrative heroes, there's no point in coming up with a leveling system. You know,
Right.
honestly, there might not be any point in coming up with a narrative hero sort of thing, and it might be everyone gets a mega.
Yeah.
Why
Why
not?
not?
And then points and army comp. And the reason why I put army comp and point / army comp is because you don't have to use points.
Right.
You can do old school open play rules where you go, oh, you're going to bring a bunch of Namarti? Fine. I'm going to bring a bunch of, I don't know what counters Namarti. I'd
Yeah,
probably
it's
better
fine.
play. What counters Namarti?
Anything that just does a little bit of damage. I mean, the Marty fall over. They've only got a 5-up armor save, so just
Yeah,
got to
yeah.
hit them once.
And then you got to figure out, whenever it also comes to the size of armies, is everyone going to have the same army? Is it going to be one big army versus a bunch of small armies? Where you want to do that. And then for balance, again, we've brought this up a couple times here. Is the intent for it to be even like a match play game, or is it intent for things to be broken? I will get into a couple examples whenever I get into my event, whenever I kind of go down here. And then for win conditions, because one of the things that I always feel about narrative events, I think one of the best opportunities to get away from that win-lose is to try and figure out what's the goal. If the goal isn't simply just whoever gets the most victory points wins, this is the opportunity to do that. And I'll kind of get into that as well whenever I get to my example. So, again, that's just something to think about. It doesn't have to be a win-lose. It's just what happened. How did it play out? Did my army get decimated? Did both of our armies come down to like one hero on each side just slapping each other? Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, like we were talking about before, come up with a time limit. Narrative games do take longer, so come up with a time limit. So here's the example that I came up with: the misbehavior of the Great Wizard Fox. It was a 4-player game, there's 4 players at the event, and all games were 4-player games. It was 1 day, 3 rounds. I used the standard AOS 2.0 rules, and what I did is I had gold coins. I literally just bought a pack of gold coins, fake gold coins off of off Amazon. And what I do is I would put them all over the table, just everywhere. And if you walked through or ended within 1 inch of a coin, you picked it up.
Okay.
As soon as you had those coins, you could then buy spells. And the spells were essentially a way to... So the gold was the Great Wizard Fox's treasure. Like, that was his money. And so if you gave it back to him, he would then favor you with a spell. One of the good examples was a damaging spell. It was like 5 coins to do D3 mortal wounds to a unit.
Okay.
But if you could go up. So if you gave him 10 coins, you could do D3 mortal wounds to every unit in a player's army.
Okay. That could be very scary. Yeah.
And then I think it was like 15 was to do D3 mortal wounds to all other armies. But then to make it fun, for 4 coins, you could do D3 mortal wounds to every unit on the table.
Ooh. Ooh. Yeah, just here you go. Here's your money back. I know this is gonna hurt. It's okay.
So what's really funny is one of the ones that was my favorite is this was, again, whenever KO came out, and I was trying to convince Chuck, no, it's a bad army. And he was like, no, you just haven't given it a chance. So I came up with a spell called the SS Failboat. And what the SS Failboat was is you had to spend 10 coins and you gave somebody the frigate war scroll.
Okay.
And they got control of a frigate.
All right.
If the frigate was on the table at the end of the turn, they want to be paid for their
service.
For their services. So they take 2d3 coins, and they also take 2d3 victory points.
Wow.
So there's only two ways to get rid of the SS Failboat, and that is it being destroyed, but it's on your team, so you can't attack it.
Right.
And then 2, pay the original cost plus 1 for the number of times it's been given to someone else.
Boy.
And you give it to someone.
Pay them off to go somewhere else.
Yes.
Oh boy.
So Chuck, being Chuck, he wanted to show me how good the frigate was and that I just wasn't using it properly.
Mm-hmm.
So he gave one of our friends 12 coins to cast the spell on him.
Okay.
Because he's like, well, can I just pick myself? And I said, no, the spell says you must pick an opponent,
another
other than
player. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so the other player did it, and he was stuck with this thing the entire game, and no one cared about it. They just stayed outside of 3, and they're like, what are you gonna do? You're a dumb frigate.
Yeah.
And then no. And so getting into the goals here, I came up with as opposed to just win-lose, I came up with metrics of whoever had the most and least of coins, victory points, and kill points.
Okay.
And so because of the Failboat, it put him right in the middle of both coins and victory points. So he got nothing. And so one of the things that I did here was, like, I can't remember offhand. I'm sure I could find the book somewhere, or my pack somewhere. But like, the person that had the highest victory points determined where, which deployment zone was each player's.
Okay.
But the person with the lowest kill points determined the deployment order.
Okay.
So, again, it was this great way where, okay, you got the most victory points. Good for you. However, that just lets you get a pregame move.
Right. Yeah. Something small.
Right.
But yeah.
And so basically what I wanted to do for this is I wanted it to grow. So for round 1, it was the skirmish rules. It was a free-for-all. And then for round 2, I didn't want to worry too much about points, so I just let everyone just use the old Path to Glory rules, which was basically like you had a hero pick, and like it told you how many number of units you could pick from a list.
Okay.
And so they did that, and that was a free-for-all. Then going into round 3, it was a 1,500 point 2v2 game where the person with the highest kill points and the person with the highest victory points were on a team, and then the other 2 players were against them, and they were in a castle, and they just had to siege them and take their money.
All right, there we go.
And like I said, it was a super awesome game, and whenever I was making this up, Morgan even said, like, we need to do that again.
Sounds like a fun time.
Yeah, and actually this is another point that I wanted to kind of bring up with making your own. One of the kind of the extra things that comes in with playing a narrative game is you have to decide, does my game need a game master? I personally prefer having a game master whenever it comes to narrative, because if you are being the GM and you see something kind of going a little bonkers, Like if someone's getting, we actually had this. I forget which year it was, but there was a year where someone was getting a little too strong
Right.
fighting. So what I did is I gave the person who just had like 3/4 of their armies wiped. I gave them my Mega Boss on Maw Crusher and said, "You can put this anywhere on the table, as long as it's within 6 inches of the table edge."
Boy.
And I said, "I'll control it, but you put it wherever you want."
Hmm.
And he's going to go after whatever's closest. And so because of that, it was that little thing where it was, we adjusted on the fly,
Right.
and we got to have some narrative fun with it. Like, oh shit, a friggin' orc showed up. And not just
Right.
an orc, a friggin' war boss, you know.
Right.
And that's actually the event where my Maw Crusher got the name Muffins. So,
Muffins.
yeah.
I don't think I've gotten to hear that story. I'll have to hear it sometime.
That was just the name chosen. That was
Oh. Okay.
and then so of course I have to tout. I have to gush and show off. I have a friend that is he's an artist. He for fun. He doesn't really do anything professionally or anything like that. He doodles a lot. He's the one that actually put together the all my Champion War Scrolls. He was the one that did all the formatting because I couldn't quite figure it out, and he nailed it. He asked me if I had any projects, and I told him about this event coming up. So he actually made me a piece of art to share with my players, and he did a great job combining the anonymous mask, kind of like modifying it a little bit, taking it away from the original source, and giving it that mischievous puppet master feel. Like you can see here, he has the little chains going down over the generals and whatnot, and over the boat. This was perfect. It so encaptured everything I was thinking of, and you're not going to believe when I tell you this, but he is not familiar with Age of Sigmar.
I mean, he did quite a good job for limited knowledge of what he's doing here.
Yeah, he literally went to the Games Workshop webpage and was like, found some armies that he liked the aesthetics of and just added little bits of them.
Wow.
Yeah. So the last frame I have here is, if you're looking for more, I talked about him before, Neon. This is the organized narrative play group for Age of Sigmar. They have a website called wearetheneon.com. They show off all the events they know of that are going on. They have things that you could use. They have gaming aids. They have ideas. You just go to them for anything you need. They're so great. They're so passionate about all this. You definitely have to check it out. I know they started it whenever I kind of got involved with everything, and so I wasn't sure if they were still active or not. So I kind of looked them up just yesterday, and no, they have a post from just a couple days ago. I was like, they're always posting.
Good. I do remember this is the group that was doing the worldwide narrative thing we were talking about earlier, right?
Yeah, they were part of it. Yeah, that was basically the American branch, because I know there was a couple British guys involved with Coalescence as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was because again, whenever I hear narrative, I know a lot of people's eyes kind of gloss over.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong. I think a lot of people go, "Oh, so nothing that really pertains to me," whenever you say that.
And I think it's because they don't know. I think it's a misunderstanding more than anything else. I think you need to realize that it has as much potential as you want to put into it, and on top of that, I think the biggest issue is it's just that do whatever you want. Okay, well, I'm just not going to do anything then.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people look at a blank page and go, I don't know what to do with that.
I'm
And
not going to
that's
ruin a
okay.
perfectly good blank sheet of page.
Right. Yes, exactly. No, and I think, especially if a lot of work gets put into a narrative event, it can very easily be much better than any sort of match play event.
Oh,
Because at the end of the
absolutely.
day, match play, whenever you show up, unless there's some sort of odd rule for the event you're going to,
Right.
they're all very cookie cutter and similar in nature.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, I
So,
might remember some standout opponents
yeah,
at the grand tournaments that I've been to. I don't really remember too many games. However, I still remember almost all of my Holy Havoc games.
good, good. Yeah, that speaks volumes to that event that you remember what happened there.
Right. I remember. I forget what the name of the table is, but he has this interesting like structure in the middle of the table,
Okay.
which is like it's a bunch of like blocks just like glued together in like this weird pattern, and
I've
then it
seen a picture of it.
well,
Yeah.
so that moves and does an ridiculous amount of damage.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And
Yeah.
so on the game before, we were on uh, the altar of corn table,
Okay.
and Chuck completely left me hanging out to dry, so he could get Marathi on the altar just so he could take a picture of it in game.
Oh, geez.
So this game was where my guys decided to settle their grudge on Marathi or Teyrathi, and so
And
I shot it directly at her.
oh, geez.
And our opponents were like, "What are you doing?"
Right.
I'm like, "Settling a grudge." And they're like, "Don't let us stop you."
Yeah. All you, buddy.
So again, like I said, and again, that's coming from someone that loves mechanics, loves balance, loves
Mhm.
all of that stuff. So don't think that it's not for you, especially if you haven't tried it. Worst case scenario, try it one Sunday, and if you don't like it, don't do it again.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
again, like I said, it's as easy as going to your battle tome and finding the battle plan and going, "Hey, do you want to try this out Saturday?" All right.
Yeah. 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 Those missions are great, and they tell a little story in there as well. So it's just fine to go with those and see. Oh, hey, that was kind of fun to have a different goal than what we're used to. Let's try that again.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, so that's I think everything I have to say about narrative. I know I did a lot of talking this month. Cole, is there anything you wanted to add that I kind of skipped over?
No, I mean, as much as you say you're not in the narrative, I think you are the person I know who is very passionate about it and you enjoy it whenever you do get the chance to do it. And so every time you do, you want it to be something everyone remembers.
Yeah.
I think that's how narrative is supposed to be. It's supposed to be, hey, we're all going to get together. We're just going to relax, have a fun time. And this very well may not be anywhere near balanced, but everyone's going to remember this epic thing that occurred.
Yeah, definitely. I think if I like I like uniqueness. You
Hmm.
know, I like to me that's what's memorable. And so I whenever you do have narrative, it's your opportunity to put a signature on something.
Hmm.
And so I said, so even though yes, 99% of what I do is match play, and I kind of avoid the how dare you, knave? I shall get the. I kind
Right.
of I steer
No,
clear of
I
that
understand.
the same way I steer clear of LARPing.
Right.
But at the same time, yes, there is an aspect of narrative that I absolutely love, which is the added mechanic stuff where it
Yeah.
just cranks the chaos up to 11.
Yeah. Does that. Gives you a wonderful excuse to explore the Age of Sigmar narrative and
Yep.
everything that's going on there, too. So, especially for a lot of match play folks or just folks in general trying to figure out what's going on in the Age of Sigmar lore, this might be a good excuse for you to sit there and go, figure out what on earth is going on in the mortal realms right now.
Yeah.
So we can do a narrative companion based on it.
Yeah. So maybe one thing what I'll do is, I was talking. Morgan was asking about doing the Guy Fawkes thing again. Maybe what
Yeah.
I'll do is, I told her we'll think about it whenever, if ever the Sylvaneth book comes out. And maybe what I'll
Right.
do is I'll figure out trying to put something together at Ligonier,
Sounds great.
and maybe I could release the pack, and we could talk about it for an episode.
That would work for me. Yeah. Yeah. I think that'd be great.
All right. Well,
Explain the epic deeds that would happen over that day of gaming.
I'll tell you, I don't know what people are going to do with the hour I'm giving them back to their day.
I don't know. It's almost like you're on brand right now. This is kind of odd. We got to find something to bullshit about for the next hour just to keep her going.
Well, don't worry. I have a feeling next month we're going to have an extended episode, because we're both getting our battle tomes.
Yes, so excited.
You're so excited. I'm excited to talk about it.
I will talk to make up for the excitement you have. It's okay.
It'll be a counterbalance. It's going to be,
Yes, it'll be fine.
I'm going to do this, and you're going to need to do this to bring it down to absolution. That's
It'll be all right. We can do that.
all right. So we'll see everyone next month whenever I start my hiatus from the game until the Ideneth narrative or the meta goes away.
They won't be completely meta. It'll be fine.
Oh yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I'll show you all, you bastards. I'll show you all.